What is going on, everybody, and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. I want to thank you for joining me for another replay battle. My apologies for not being able to do the Dual Amroth video as I promised in my last video, but unfortunately there were some compatibility problems, so hopefully this makes up for that. I'm going to have two battles done on the... It's not the latest version of the test build anymore. I did these last night. I think there's been some new animations and stuff added, and I don't know if there's been stat changes, but there might be some small ones. But in any case, it should be very close to what it is now. This is the test build, as I was saying, of 0.95. Now, bear in mind that stats and everything are subject to change. We are going to go through a very vigorous testing period of, I would say, about a week before the patch is released, but it is very, very close to its release date now. We just need to get it to the testers and see what they think, and make any changes that we feel are necessary according to their feedback. But in any case, let's get into this. This is a 1v1 on the DEADMARSHES, and it is pretty damned good. It is very tactical, and there's a lot of back and forth, and it's pretty close right down to the finish. So in any case, let's take a look at my army comp. I have brought the Elves of Lindon, who you guys have seen before, I'm sure. I've got 2 units of the Mythlon Lancers, a nice hybrid Jav-Cav unit that are also a Lancer. And now I've got a couple units of 4 Lindon Scouts as well, which I really like these guys as a concept. And I hope that the rest of the scout units kind of follow this as well. They are reasonably decent in close quarters. They are Lancers, though, so they do get a Malice versus other Cav. And they are very small and quite lightly armored, but they can hide anywhere, so they are useful for setting up ambushes, attacking enemies on the approach towards your lines when they least expect it, and things like that, which is actually why I brought them today. I kind of forgot that we were playing on the DEADMARSHES. I thought it was going to be an open field, where these cavalry units would be much more useful, but I do get some use out of them, and you guys will see that a little bit later. Moving on to my mainline infantry, I've got 3 units of Harlindon infantry backed up by 3 units of 4 Lindon pikemen. Now, the pikemen don't have a ton of killing power behind them. They are, I think, like 10 or so damage, but they're best used, I find, in defensive formation as a support unit for your Harlindon infantry, who do have some killing power behind them. They have about 10 damage, and I gave them armor or weapon upgrades in this, so they have 11. Over here, I've got 2 units of the 4 Lindon Marines, again with attack upgrades. These guys are a hybrid Jav Spear unit, very versatile, useful for holding the line, but once they throw their Javies, not a ton of killing power behind them. Over here we have the Wardens of Elastirion, who are a ranger unit that were formerly known as the Wardens of Karen Arab or something like that. The Wardens of Elastirion are a ranger unit, and within the new Reforged patch, ranger units are, I'd say they're pretty special. Usually they can hide anywhere, so they're very stealthy. And they make great ambush archers, and they all have body piercing, which means that they are very useful for dealing with large numbers of lightly armored enemies. So for example, a great use of them would be to target pike units like this that are fairly lightly armored, and there's quite a number of factions in the game that have them, and they will shred through them pretty quickly. The trade-off, however, is that they are 100 strong, usually more expensive than other archers. I think, yeah, they're pretty well always more expensive than other archers, and they are lightly armored, so they don't do amazing against other enemy skirmishers, but they definitely have this little niche that they fulfill. Oh yeah, and of course they are also a little bit better in close quarters than your rank-and-file archers. In behind them, I've got a couple units of Harlindon Guard, who are a really, really interesting unit. They are a bow skirmisher unit, but they also have shields and spears, so they're not an easy target for cavalry by any means. So you can use them as advanced archers for your army without having to worry about babysitting them all that much. Cavalry will definitely need to be aware when they charge into these units. In behind them, I have a General's Bodyguard unit being led by Kirdan himself. That's the new general unit for the Lindon faction. The Noldoran Blade Masters are beautiful shock infantry that do some serious work. They don't have a ton of armor, however, and they are limited to 60 men in a unit. This is somewhat compensated by the fact that they have 2 HP, but yeah, you definitely need to use them as a support unit and not necessarily as a main line infantry unit, at least not on the front lines initially, because you will they will run out of steam before the battle is done, and that is not going to be a good thing for you. But I think that does it for my army, so let's go ahead and see what my opponent has brought today. The attacking army is being commanded by Dar, who I believe is one of the new RPGMs for the Third Reforged Discord, and he's going to be playing as the Elves of Lorien, and I'm really excited to show these guys off to you because they're a pretty damn cool faction, and probably my favorite Elven faction as the current game or the current patch stands as it is. Naturally, things will change a little bit during the testing process, but at the moment, I love the Elves of Lorien. So he's got 6 units of Sylvan Heavy Spearmen, or not Heavy Spearmen, just regular old Spearmen, who make an excellent meat shield lineup, and you can bring quite a number of them for reasonably cheap. They're definitely cheaper than the rest of the Elven lineup, so you can have this long line of spears that you can support with your heavier units. He's brought, I believe, 3 units of these Sylvan Heavy Archers, and if you take a look at them, they are really, really cool. I would say much improved over the green cloaked ones, kind of the classic green cloak units. They now wear their swords on their back, so you can see that they're kind of like a hybrid unit. They're a decent enough unit in melee as well, especially thanks to their low numbers and their two-handed swords. And they are not super expensive. Most of the Elven Archers, at least for the other Wood Elf faction, I think weigh in at about 1,000 or so florins. These guys are 950, so they're a bit cheaper, so you've got a little bit of extra cash and wiggle room to play around with in creating armies. Over here we've got, I believe, 2 or 3 units of these Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen and a couple units, actually 3 units, I believe, of the Galadrim Swords. And they all share that blue cloak and that kind of amber-colored armor, but the Galadrim Swords, I believe, are a new unit. They are a sword and board unit, that are a little bit less numerous than the rest of the heavier Lothlorien units, but they make up for that by having better stats. They are slightly more expensive, however. In behind we have a unit that I'm sure we're all familiar with at this point, the Sylvan Mounted Company, and they are a very able Lancer unit with a good shield value and really nice armor. Well, reasonable armor as well. The Elves of Lorien get a minus to armor as part of their faction kind of bonuses, or faction bonuses. It's not really a bonus in that case. Faction bonuses comprise both like buffs and debuffs, but in any case, they are very, very good at what they do. And I think he's got some hidden units in there as well. I'm not too sure, but we'll see as the battle moves on. So without any further ado, let's get in to this 1v1. I hope you guys enjoy it. So Dar decided he was going, a little bit of lag there, he decided he was going to take the gentlemanly approach and come to me, given that I am the definitely the much smaller army in this case. He's going to be moving forward with his Sylvan Light Spearmen, looking to block off any access here for my cavalry, which, speaking of my cavalry, I'm going to swing wide with them, wide around his position, and try and find some ways through the marshes in order to come in behind my enemy. Although this is a 1v1 version of this map, so I've got a little bit less wiggle room in terms of space that I can work with. So he's going to be able to quite adeptly lock down all of the approaches with his spearmen, which is going to zone out my cavalry for the time being. But as he moves forward with his Sylvan Heavy Archers and the rest of his Sylvan Spearmen, I am going to kind of spring my trap here. So I've got a couple units of my Wardens of Elastirion. I'm not going to use both of them at the same time, but I do have them here in this very, very nice open position that I can use to fire on the Sylvan Heavy Archers and their mainline infantry as they move in to engage my front lines and begin the skirmish phase. So the Sylvan Heavy Archers getting a little bit too close here, not really realizing the danger that they're in. And you can see some arrow volleys about to start flying in there. Yeah, indeed, you can see the Sylvan Heavy Archers begin to drop, and that accurate fire from those Rangers is going to do a ton of damage to those Archers really, really quickly. Now, most of the time, Elven Archers aren't going to die as quickly as that, but Elven Archers in general have very high accuracy, and the Wardens of Elastirion have an upper end kind of missile damage unit, or a missile damage value being a ranger unit. So the Sylvan Heavy Archers here are going to suffer quite grievously in that opening volley. They are, however, going to return fire. They're actually going to be targeting down my Lindon infantry, and you can see my infantry really struggling to stand up to that. That's just because they're a little bit lighter. I mean, it's not completely devastating them. I've only lost about 8 or so units to an elite Elven unit, so it's kind of reasonable. But the reason that they're mixed in like this, and you can really see the difference it makes, is that they are there to block the shots from my Lindon pikemen. Now, normally, units like the Sylvan Heavy Archers would absolutely melt my pike blocks, but if I mix them in here with the Lindon infantry, then they are able to stand up to that much, much better. We move over onto this, and you can see that I've brought my cavalry forward here to try and menace the flank of the Sylvan Elf army. Now I can see him bringing up his heavy archers, and I don't really want any of my cavalry to be anywhere near them. So I'm going to begin to fall back actually with my my Lindon lancers and things like that. Just because, yeah, I don't want to get them shot down. That would be an extreme waste of my resources. Over here, though, I am going to leave my Lindon scouts, however, in place, just because they are able to hide anywhere, and you can see that they are now hiding. So maybe Dar will forget about them, and he will shove off with his archers once he sees my cavalry there begin to fall back. Now over on this end, the skirmish fight is really very much underway. I brought in my Lindon guard, hoping that their shields will protect them from the high damage and high accuracy of the Elves of Lorien, but they are actually suffering quite grievously, although they are standing up to it reasonably well. But my Lindon guard on their own are actually being overwhelmed just by the sheer number of archers that he has across the field. So I'm actually going to be moving in with my second unit of Lindon guard to try and put up a stout resistance here. And you can see my Wardens of Lorien are also locked in that skirmish fight, and they're going to suffer very, very badly at the hands of those archers. Like I said, ranger units don't have a lot of armor, so every single one of those hits is probably going to kill one of them. So, yeah, very unfortunate for them, but they are a powerful unit, so they do kind of have to pay for that some way. Now, over on this end, you can see the rest of the Sylvan Heavy Archer company is being brought a little bit closer to bear against my my Lindon Guard and my Pike Blocks, my infantry, because I am able to now focus fire down this this one advanced unit of Sylvan Heavy Archers, and they're taking a lot of damage from my Lindon Guard. Let's see what's going on over here. So far, nothing is going to be happening with the cavalry on that end, but around this time, I realized that there's really no point for me to continue to just sit back and get shot to death. Now, I'm already at something of a disadvantage in terms of numbers, so I'm going to be the aggressor here, and I'm going to move forward with my Lindon Marines and a... what would you call this? I would call them almost like a squad or something like that. They both support one another. This block here of my Lindon infantry and my my Lindon pikemen. So my Lindon Marine's going to get ahead of the rest of the army, discharge a volley of spears at the Sylvan Heavy Spearmen, and that's going to do some serious damage over time. Yeah, another volley of those javelins coming in. You can see those Sylvan Spearmen really not up to the task of dealing with my javelins. This is going to be... actually, there's something pretty important that I'm doing here. Now, what I want to do is try and get Dar to commit as much of his forces as possible so that I can focus them down with my own missiles and with my my remaining javelins. Now, Lindon really very much needs a combined arms approach to be effective. So what I'm doing is I'm sending my infantry at this left wing here, and on the right I'm going to be focusing it down with my missiles to try and weaken it and force him to commit more and more of his forces to the line, where I can focus them down in turn with my missiles. Now, over on this end, you can see I'm actually moving forward with my my Lindon Lancers now, or my Mithlon Lancers rather. My idea is to just keep the pressure on the Sylvan Elves on multiple points, so they're not really able to focus and concentrate in any one area and give me a lot of trouble. So I'm trying to divide their forces and use my missile units to their greatest effect. Now, Dar's going to try and take advantage of this large gap here in my line. I've brought forward a team here of my Lindon infantry and my Lindon long spears or pikes or whatever, and he sees an opportunity. So he's going to move forward with his Sylvan mounted company, and I'm going to hit him with my Wardens of Lorien on the approach as he moves in. I'm going to inflict some fairly light casualties, but these guys have the armor and the shield value that from the front they'll be able to stand up to that fairly well. Now, this is what I didn't realize was waiting in store for me. We've got some Sylvan Staff Masters here who are a tar pit unit that don't do a lot of damage, but they are AP, so they can hurt some things, but... yeah, I was going with my Mithlon Lancers thinking I'd have no problems here dealing with those Sylvan Heavy Spearmen, but they ended up running smack dab right into the middle of those Sylvan Spearmasters, who I think get a slight cavalry bonus as well. So my Lancers will not take a ton of damage there, but they're going to take more than what I had intended them to, so I'm going to need to fall back, especially with those Sylvan Mounted Company bearing down on them. Although some volleys from the rear are going to inflict some fairly significant casualties on them, although they are now out of range of my Wardens of Lorien and Elven Archers. I think I've lost a significant amount of range in this patch. So now I'm going to be obliged to flee with my 2 units of Mithlon Lancers, try and get out of there as quickly as possible before the Sylvan Mounted Company are able to mount a charge into the rear. Now, as they flee, they're going to discharge a volley of javelins at the Mounted Company, and that is going to be real ugly for those mounted Sylvan warriors, and they're going to take some light casualties there as well. Moving in now with my 4 Lindon scouts, trying to drive those cavalry back behind the lines, and that is going to be enough for Dar and his warriors, and they are going to flee back behind the safety of the Sylvan lineup. Now, over on this end, this is where the party really is at the moment. I've moved in with my Lindon infantry, trying to get their high damage and charge bonus going against the spearmen. They're going to do relatively well. They are a spear unit facing down a lower tier, or a higher tier, I would say, or maybe they're both the same tier. I can't quite remember. But Lindon infantry are definitely head and shoulders above them, although I am taking some pretty significant missile damage right now, so that is swinging the fight in their favor. But now with the arrival of the Lindon pikemen, hopefully my fairly reduced forces here, they suffered quite grievously on the approaches. You can see a lot of dead bodies in the back there. Hopefully they'll be able to pin these guys in place long enough for me to focus down the other end of the Sylvan lineup, and if he doesn't commit any more forces here, then I will eventually be able to flank around, or maybe even get through with my cavalry, so that would be a big win for me. But since my Lindon infantry and my pikemen were taking such heavy losses on the approach from the Sylvan heavy archers, I've decided to move in with another squad of my Lindon pikemen and my Lindon infantry, so you can see a big volley of spears going into the Sylvan spearmen, and this extra committing of my my infantry is going to make Dar move forward and react with some of his Sylvan heavy swordsmen. So this is actually a really nice target for me. They are very vulnerable to missile damage. So as they, oh wow, are those javelins? The arms on those elves, holy crap. But as they move forward, they are going to present a serious, both a threat and a very valuable opportunity. I will be able to cut them down pretty quickly with my Wardens of Elost here, and you can see hiding in the back there, but they are definitely within range, able to do some serious work on those Sylvan heavy swordsmen. But I've also got my javelins down there as well. I'm trying to focus down on these more important Sylvan units. Now you can see a second unit of my pikemen moving in, but they are suffering very, very heavy losses at the hands of those remaining Sylvan heavy archers. So now the Sylvan heavy swordsmen have been committed to the fight. Unfortunately, they weren't able to get their charge bonus off, and you can see them just being absolutely massacred by missile volleys from the Wardens of Elost here. And this is kind of the perfect situation for those Wardens of Elost to be used. These guys are very tightly packed, close together, so that body piercing can really do a lot of work. And let's see, over on this end, looks like I was charging down with my Lindon scouts, these Sylvan Staff Masters, again, just trying to open up another lane of attack here. If I can get my Mython Lancers in here to deal with the Sylvan Heavy Spearmen from range with their javelins, I can continuously put a lot of pressure on Dar, and maybe even frustrate him to the point where I can get him to come forward. Now, that is definitely a tactic that you can use in your games if you can just be very fluid with your forces and with your skirmishers. That does tend to get under the skin of a lot of people, and can sometimes make them do a little bit reckless things, like moving forward to try and silence that threat when it's not necessarily in their interest. But in any case, not too much going on over there with my Lindon cavalry, so let's move back over to the front lines here with the Sylvan heavy swordsmen, and they have been beaten quite heavily. Now that my units are able to support one another, you can really see very clearly the combined arms approach that it takes to be successful as Lindon. In a straight fight, the Elves of Lorien have the numbers and they have the quality that they would beat me. They would beat me quite soundly. My Lindon pikemen and my Lindon infantry, even together, are not enough to beat the Galadrim swords and the rest of the Lorien lineup in close quarters. So you really have to support your pike blocks, use them as pinning units, and then focus things down with your missiles as best as you are able. And of course you have your cavalry as well. So they play a lot like what you'd expect ancient Macedon, I would say, to play with, or to play like, rather. My Mython Lancers here moving forward, looking like they want to commence the skirmishing down of this Sylvan Spear line, but I kind of left them on skirmish mode, so they are going to get a little bit close here, and I think they end up turning around because of the presence of the Sylvan Spear Masters, or Staff Masters rather. Oh, no, never mind. So they are going to be able to get in there and start doing some serious work on those Sylvan Heavy Spearmen. You can really see the importance of managing the different parts of your army and making them all work in tandem together. Now, that doesn't just apply to Lindon. I find that applies to all of the armies in general, much more so than in previous patches where you could rely on single, very powerful units to do a lot of work for you. Now you need to support every aspect of your army. So it's a lot more tactical that way, I find, in this patch than in previous patches where it was a little bit more straightforward. Now you're really going to want to pay attention and to try and support all of your army with other portions of your army as best as you can. It's a very modern approach to warfare with the combined arms. So the Sylvan Spearmen are going to be moving forward because I think they've had quite enough of my lip, and I'm going to have to fall back again with my cavalry, trying to induce these Sylvan Spearmen to come out and play a little bit. Now, this is going to be an opportunity for Dar. He's driven back my cavalry. He's basically screened for them with his Sylvan Spearmen. This is actually a pretty smart move. So now he's moved forward, locked me out of supporting the rest of my army. He's going to move forward with the Sylvan Mounted Company and go for my Wardens of Elostirion. Now I need these guys. They're doing a ton of damage to the Lothlorien infantry, and I'm going to need them moving forward because there's still so much of the Elves of Lorien reserves left that I need to chew through. So I'm going to move them forward. At the same time, I'm going to fall back with a unit of my 4 Lindon pikemen, and they're going to try and cover the retreat of this very vulnerable archer unit as they flee from that cavalry. So Dar is going to see this, and he's going to basically just bypass that. He doesn't need to take that fight, and he's not going to be able to get a good piece of my Wardens of Elostirion anyway. So I think what he's going to go for is my Noldor and Blademaster, so I can see this, and I'm definitely concerned. So I'm trying to come in with my own cavalry. You can see my 4 Lindon scouts leading the way, trying to get in there and defend my rear lines. But I'm going to move forward with my Noldor and Blademasters and get them behind my Harlindon Guard. And at the same time, I'm going to move up with a unit of 4 Lindon Marines. So now I have a nice defense for the back of my line. If he tries to charge through the Harlindon Guard, he will take fairly heavy casualties, I would say, and it will give my Noldor and Blademasters an opportunity to turn around and counter-charge if need be. Now, let's slow things down just a little bit here. You can see these Sylvan Mounted Company charging headlong into my 4 Lindon Marines, and they will do a fair amount of damage. They are Lancer units, and I wasn't really all that well formed up in a densely packed formation. But once those spears come down, you can really see those Sylvan Mounted Company start to be in trouble. So Dar's going to pull them out of there as quickly as possible, and I'm going to take an opportunity here to do a little bit of cap charging of my own. My Mithril Lancers now out of ammunition. I'm going to exploit this gap in Dar's line by committing both of his units to Sylvan Heavy Spearmen over there. He did, or Light Spearmen rather, he did open up a hole in his line. So I'm going to flood through that with my Mithlon Lancers, charge into what remains of his archer companies, and now I definitely have missile superiority. So I'm going to keep my Lancers in 2 different positions, use my Micro to keep him busy in a whole bunch of different places, and rear charge this group of Sylvan Spearmen here. And that's going to be really, really ugly for them. That Hammer and Anvil charge from a high damage Lancer unit like the Mithlon Lancers is going to do some serious work. Now over here I'm using my other Mithril Lancer unit to silence his archers, but he's going to counterattack with some of his Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen. And into the back of my Lancers they will go, and many of my Lancers are going to fall. So I'm going to have to get them out of there as quickly as possible, but I don't want to just run them into the Sylvan Heavy Archers, because then they'll just get bogged down and cut down by a second charge from the Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen. So I'm going to get them out of there, make it kind of look like I'm retreating. It's a bit of a feint retreat, and use my Mithlon Lancers to draw Dar's attention to what I'm doing. So if he goes after my Mithril Lancers here, then he will leave these guys open to charge down into the Sylvan Heavy Archers, and then it's just a constant menace being presented at different points that Dar is going to have to deal with. So with these Mithlon Lancers, however, I'm going to turn them right around and charge into this very juicy target right here. And yeah, let's get that charge in, and we'll go elsewhere on the battlefield. A beautiful Hammer and Anvil charge there by the Mithlon Lancers into the rear of the Galadrim Swords, and you can really see the effect there on the Lothlorien Elves. Actually, I think a lot of them are thinking of routing, so again, even elite Elven units can rout in this patch. But back here, I managed to pin him in place with my 4 Lindon Scouts and then move in with my 4 Lindon Marines, but Dar saw what I was trying to do, and he's actually going to scoot his Sylvan Mounted Company out of there, and they're going to live to fight another day. So the cavalry attack on my back lines was not as successful, rather, as I think Dar needed it to be. I know he wanted to get into the back of my infantry here, and if he did that, that would have been disaster. I would have had nothing left to hold back the still fairly numerous Galadrim forces, and I think he's actually got a reserve unit back here as well of Galadrim swords and some Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen. Although these guys won't be lasting for too much longer, I've actually brought up my Wardens of Elostirion, and I'm getting to focus them down. So I'm doing a good job at picking apart the various parts of the Lothlorien army, but if he'd managed to get into the back of my Noldor and Blademasters, it would have been game over. I don't have enough infantry left to win a straight infantry fight, and I don't have enough missiles left to focus them down in time. But yeah, in any case, I'm going to leave my 4 Lindon Scouts here in the back and use them to defend the rear of my main infantry line, but I make a big error here, and Dar is going to take quick advantage of it. So you can see the Sylvan Mounted Company here. They're going to be going right for my Wardens of Elostirion, and I did not see this until it was too late. So they're going to get a nice charge into the back of my undefended Ranger unit, and that's going to be a big problem. I could try and get them out of there afterwards, but then it's going to leave, of course, the back of my pikemen and my Harlindon infantry wide open to rear charges, which is going to be a disaster. So a big charge there into the Wardens of Elostirion. Dar finally getting the payoff from his cavalry that he's really needed this whole match, and it's going to kill almost about half of my unit of Wardens of Elostirion, who were just completely unprepared for that. So now that I've seen the threat, I am going to be able to react. I'm moving in now with my 4 Lindon scouts, and I'm going to start falling back here with my Wardens of Elos Tyrians, just to try and get them away from that Sylvan Mounted Company, because I know exactly what he's doing. He's going to be falling back a little bit, getting some distance, and then he's going to turn right back around and try and cycle charge back into my Wardens of Elos Tyrian. He wants to get rid of his missile units. This is one of my biggest advantages at this point, and they are well situated to completely annihilate the rest of these Galadrim infantry with a flanking shot, or with flanking shot, I should say. Mython Lancers here doing some serious work on the rest of the Galadrim line. My Mython Lancers don't seem to be something that Dar really has an answer to at this point. It doesn't have quite enough cavalry to really deal with the fluid menace that I can present to him. So instead, once he sees my Wardens of Elos Tyrian going away, he's going to try and get my full Lindon pikemen, but I was ready for it. I'm going to be able to turn them around in time, and a couple of his horsemen, I think, are going to end up in that big mass of pikes and swiftly cut down. At the same time, coming in from the rear with my 4 Lindon scouts, managing to trap this Sylvan Mounted Company, and now I've turned around my Wardens of Elos Tyrian, and we're going to be able to put some serious fire into the rear of those Sylvan horsemen. Over on this end, I got my 4 Lindon Marines moving in at the same time. I really want to get rid of this Mounted Company. They've been a serious thorn in my side the entire time, really kept me on my toes. Dar is a very experienced player, so if I let him run around with this Sylvan Mounted Company, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. So he sees kind of the predicament that he's in, and he's going to charge again into the rear of my 4 Lindon pikemen. But once again, my pikemen are ready for it. They are going to turn around, and they're going to find themselves pinned between some pike units and the rest of my army. Now, I've got a clutch of javelins coming in there, though unfortunately it ended up with more friendly fire, I think, than what I really wanted. And my 4 Lindon scouts are a little bit slow to react, so they are going to leave a lane of retreat open for the Sylvan Mounted Company, and ultimately they will be able to fall back after taking, I'd say, about half losses. So those are heavy losses there for the Mounted Company, but they did definitely get some payoff in terms of silencing my Wardens of Elos Tyrian. But now they are very much safe, and I'm able to again focus their tender attention on the Galadrim swords and the remaining Galadrim infantry, of which there is still quite a lot. There's a very healthy unit here of the Galadrim swords. Yeah, it's definitely been a very intense battle, a lot of back and forth. Over on this side, I've got my Mython Lancers still trying to run around and make it through Dar's lines in order to continue to be a menace for the rear of his infantry block. Now I can see him moving over with the Sylvan Heavy Spearmen. I'm realizing that I'm making a mistake by overcommitting, so I'm going to pull back with my Mython Lancers, and yeah, there's a very good reason to do this. He's only really got one unit to defend his back lines. He can't defend every approach, so I'm going to fall back here with this smaller unit of Mython Cavalry, who are a little bit less of a threat, I think, and less likely to be focused on by Dar. And over here, I'm going to move in with my Mython Lancers, and look like I'm going to try and commit to this side, although I don't think that I do. Yeah, over on this side, I kind of lost micro on my cav a little bit. Mython Lancers just sitting there, not really doing anything. They could be very useful for charging into the rear of these Sylvan Spearmen, so I should definitely try and use them for that. Now let's see, where are those pesky Galadrim Company, or Mounted Company? Yeah, here they are. Now, I've still got a reasonable amount of 4 Lindon Guard, or Harlindon Guard left, rather, and a small number of my Wardens of Elos Tyrian. So I am trying to focus these guys down in the approach and move in with my 4 Lindon Scouts, but unfortunately, 4 Lindon Scouts a little bit too late to the party, and we're not going to be able to get the devastating broadside charge, like a T-bone, basically, into the Sylvan Mounted Company, and they're going to be able to escape and charge headlong into the back of my infantry block, which is what Dar has wanted the entire time. At the same time, he's going to move in with the unit of Sylvan Spearmen, pin the rest of my army in place, and that is going to be a devastating hammer and anvil charge into the rear of my already thin-on-the-ground infantry lineup. I'm not going to let him get away this time, however, so I'm going to charge into the rear with my 4 Lindon Scouts, and I'm going to focus down his Mounted Company with my remaining Wardens of Elos Tyrian. So ultimately, this is looking like it's going to be a win for me. Charge into the rear by my Mython Lancers. Going to hit the remaining Galadrim infantry very, very hard. Possibly cause even a little bit of routing here. Oh, not quite. Very close, though. My Noldoran Blade Masters are going to be all that's needed to continue to cut down all that remains of the Sylvan infantry. Now, I think he's still got some of his Mounted Company left. He's got his General and one other unit, but effectively these guys have been taken out of the fight, which is going to leave me the master of the field. Over on this end, I'm now focusing down what remains of the Sylvan Light Spearmen with my Wardens of Elastirion, who are going to be very, very useful in this regard against a densely packed infantry formation like the Sylvan Spearmen, especially on the flank there. Coming in from the rear again with my Mythlon Lancers, just trying to focus down these units as best I can, because my infantry are not up to the task, even against the Sylvan Heavy Spearmen, because they are a Spearman unit with Shield Wall. Actually, a note on that, most infantry units have lost Shield Wall except for Spearmen, and I think a select few Dwarf units. The Sylvan Spearmen are going to be able to just push right through my pikemen, so they present a serious danger to the Lindon style of warfare now, and can be used as the literal spearhead of any assault on a densely packed infantry formation like those in the Elves of Lindon. So that's a nice little tidbit there. So yeah, these guys are definitely a danger, even though they are a low-tier spear unit. And that is going to be it. Dar's going to admit defeat. A very close game, 92 to 83. I don't really have a whole lot left. I've got some cavalry, and I think most of my remaining units are accounted amongst my very battered infantry brigades and my unit of Wardens of Elastirion. So it was a very good game to Dar. Definitely kept me on my toes the whole time. If he managed to get one of those rear charges, even one of them, it would have been game over for the Elves of Lindon. But luckily, I had a lot of options here in terms of like locking down his movement and trying to zone him out. And I had the cavalry advantage as well. So while he was away with his Sylvan Mounted Company, I was able to just kind of run amok in his back lines because he didn't really have any remaining counters to that. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you again when I release my next 1v1 with the Dwarves of Khazad-dûm versus, again, the Dwarves, or the Elves of Lorien with a significantly changed army composition. But in any case, I hope you guys enjoyed this so far, and I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye!